So the next chapter is called The Prince of Darkness. What a chapter name. What a name to give the next chapter. So, Zeldris' nickname is going to be called the Prince of Darkness. I think very fitting, especially since apparently he's called, the executioner of the Demon King. He has a portion of the Demon King's power, and since technically Meliodas is so broken, and we know he has a power of like a destroyer to even rip off the Demon King's arm, we can kind of assume that whatever power maybe Zeldris has is potentially could rival Meliodas. I mean, since Zeldris is technically the blood brother of Meliodas, then it's very clear that, he's probably going to be extremely powerful. But let's get into some nitty-gritty details here. So, I noticed this chapter really wanted to hype all of us up, or Nakaba-sensei really wanted to hype us up with power levels. It was stated in the first half of this chapter that, numbers don't really mean that much. But then she's like, Merlin says, I know I said numbers don't matter, but Rudisil's numbers, it is partially the reason why we were even able to go to this place in the first place is because of how strong he is. So, I mean, I'm not really the biggest fan of this power scaling, power level, power creep. It's something I've talked about consistently in these recent chapters and all that, because personally, I've never been the biggest fan of power levels, unless a writer can really keep it consistent and make it to where you can easily comprehend what's going on here, which is one of the big reasons why I love Hunter x Hunter so much, is because Nin is so complex, the system of it, that honestly, even the weakest of individuals can rival gods, or gods of that said series, because of just how Nin works, and it makes sense. But I'm not saying Nakaba-sensei is a bad writer, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that it's hard to really deal with power scaling, especially when you add in numbers, because there can be some inconsistencies. And in this case, we're starting to see some stuff like this, which it's not the biggest thing I'm a fan of when it comes to Taizai. And I think many can agree with me that power scaling or power level is definitely something that probably should never have been added to the series. The only reason why it probably was just to make this series more in line with a normal shonen, but also to give hype or feats to an individual character to make them seem scarier than the last foe we faced. For instance, let's say the first individual foe had a power level, let's say 5,000. Then the next arc we're introduced to a foe with a power level of 12,000. This kind of did happen. And that's basically what's going on here. These power levels are only there just to build up the hype for said individuals, to make it like, oh man, these guys are crazy. They're stronger than Escanor. Their power levels, or what's being stated here, is higher than Escanor's. The only thing that Escanor could potentially use would maybe be able to use like the one mode or something. So I mean, when you look at everything, there's a lot of inconsistencies in the power levels, power scaling, and I think honestly, if you really want to appreciate this series, you want to enjoy these chapters, these fights and stuff, and Taizai in general, you're probably going to just need to look past power levels and not really put a whole lot of thought into it, unless they really start shoving into our face that it's important to follow them. But for now, I think for the most part, I'm going to ignore power levels, because I don't think it's really going to be anything worthy of mentioning, and it's just going to lead into a lot of inconsistencies and issues. But okay. Anyways, this chapter of Taizai, I really like how Zeldris' build-up is being done within this chapter. Like, when Merlin attacked Chandler and Cusack and Zeldris, they both were kind of being brushed back a little bit, Cusack and Chandler. Like, they were both, like, feeling the effects of Merlin's attack. But then you see Zeldris, he's just sitting in the middle of it, and he's just looking over at Merlin, and he's not really even be affected at all. Like, when you look at him, he's not even getting pushed back, which is kind of scary, just to show that his level is definitely far beyond Chandler and Cusack's, which makes sense. I mean, he was technically in line to maybe potentially being the next Demon King, and potentially, being as strong as Meliodas, because, I mean, he is Meliodas' brother. So, I mean, it makes sense why he was able to withstand Merlin's attack, but it's still cool to see a feat like that. Now, that type of stuff is what I like to see. Feats like that matter more to me than just a number. And it shows that for him to withstand an attack like that, especially the flame attack that, Rudisil used at the end of the chapter, shows that Zeldris' power level is definitely beyond maybe even current Rudisil's power right now. It shows he's incredibly strong, at the very least. His feats, he's definitely among the top of strength. So, he's definitely above Escanor, which that I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to go down if Escanor actually has to fight the man. But judging by the way this fight is kind of appearing to be, it seems like it's actually going to be a 2v2, 1v1. That's what it looks like. It seems like Zeldris and Rudisill are going to be going at each other, and Cusack and Chandler are going to be going up against Merlin and Escanor at the same time. That's what it looks like to me when I look at this chapter, which isn't a bad thing, by the way. I would love to see Merlin and Escanor working together, teaming up together, because that's one of the big reasons why I love Taizai. Taizai has always been a series about teamwork, having our characters work together to bring down foes. It's one of the biggest things I've always loved about this series, because yes, we do get 1v1s. That does happen within this series, but most of the big fights that we get, usually it's a team-based fight. Different characters coming together to bring down the bad or the villain or whoever they must face. I mean, think about the whole stuff with Mel and how, King, Diane, and Galther had to work together just to bring that man down. There's never really been, a true 1v1. They're very rare. Like Meliodas and Escanor, that was a rare 1v1 you don't normally get. So, that's one of the big features I love about this series. And so I feel like Merlin and Escanor are probably just going to work together to bring down Cusack and Chandler, which, let's get into that. So, as we know, from what we know at the very least from Escanor's current feats and all that, he was able to fight Assault Mode Meliodas. Now, obviously, Meliodas wasn't using his main power, from what we found out recently, but even then, though, Meliodas was pretty ridiculous in terms of his strength, and Escanor stood up to that, and yes, he was pretty much barely standing. Once everything was said and done, Escanor collapsed and basically fell over, but he did win against Assault Mode Meliodas. You cannot, discredit that. That is exactly what happened in the series. Regardless of power levels or whatever, he was able to face Assault Mode Meliodas, which, from what we know of, is ridiculous. So, him standing up to Chandler and Cusack, if we disregard power levels, makes sense, because Meliodas was in line to be the Demon King. And on top of that, we see Escanor actually demonstrate he's able to defend against Cusack and Chandler when they're both fighting him at once. You can even see it, like when they go at him at once, go at Merlin, he jumps in and, he defends Merlin. He does get knocked back. You see him slide back and all that, but he does not take any damage. When you look very closely, no damage was taken, which shows that Escanor's strength, at the very least, his durability, is still very high, and he's able to tank their attacks pretty well. And that would mean that since Merlin is a long-distance spellcaster, their fighting styles will definitely work together very well. Because think about it like this. Merlin, she is a powerful mage. One of the most powerful mages in this series. She was able to trick the Demon King and the Supreme Goddess to get the power she has. She's incredibly strong. And because of this, her standing behind Escanor being the front-face tank and warrior, while she potentially is doing spellcasting behind him, is going to work wonders. I feel like that's probably what it's going to turn into, and if Merlin's going to be doing that for Escanor, I feel like maybe Chandler and Cusack might pull up a similar thing. Because as we remember, Chandler is someone that's a spellcaster. He is a legit spellcaster. He's not actually technically a real physical fighter. He's strong in physical fighting, but he's actually a spellcaster. So, if we factor in Cusack, what we've seen, he seems like someone that's more along the lines of a tank, while Chandler could be someone that's just a spellcaster, sits in the back. And so, when we really look at this, it's going to mainly be Cusack and Escanor going at each other, and Chandler and Merlin probably casting magic to help these two out and trying to control the fight. So that's kind of cool. I wonder if that's where Nakaba Sensei is currently taking the fight because of the setup within this chapter. Now let's talk about Hindi for a second. So Hindi, he rushed in to save Rudisill, or Margaret's body. Now, we know Hindi is someone that's very devoted to the goddess clan. He's a druid. We know this. So it's obvious why he would go so far. He's like a believer that does not want to see basically his god receive any harm. And so he rushes in the thick of battle, which is ballsy, by the way. I will give Hendrickson that. Ballsy to rush in the middle of that to try to save Rudisill and not allow him to come to any harm from Cusack. Now, Rudisill does state that, I was going to be fine. I was going to be able to counterattack Cusack and knock him back. But even then, though, Hindi did an incredible feat by jumping in like that and saving Rudisill. Now, Hindi did get damaged, by the way, which Rudisill did heal him, which that's the interesting part about this chapter. Regardless of the fights and stuff, feats, whatever, Rudisill actually healed Hendrickson. Which, when we think about Rudisill's personality, his character, it really does seem like he actually cares about Hendrickson. It really does seem like that. And from everything we've seen prior, Rudisill is technically someone that thinks he's better than everyone. From what we've seen, he started an entire war against the Demon Clan because he just hates demons. He feels like Goddess Clan's technically better than every other species. We've seen this with what he did to the humans in the past. But seeing how he actually took compassion and kindness on Hindi, it's pretty impressive, and I wonder if there's really more to Rudisill's character that we really don't know about, and we might find out very soon through Hindi and his interaction with him. But okay, I think that's pretty much about it, though, when it comes to this chapter. It's very simple, sets up the fight, and I'm excited to see, the Prince of Darkness, Zeldris, go in with his, power from the Demon King and his original power. I'm curious to see how strong it is, and if Rudisill can even stand up to something like that. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.